Okay, good afternoon. We will go ahead and get started. This is a different type of session. We're not going to do the regular scientific presentation. It's going to be an informative session and more a time to celebrate. Because it has been it has been a fair amount of work, but it has paid off in a major way. All the work that many of us have put. So I'm going to give an introduction on what the San Antonio Claude Pepper Center is. Most of you have heard that the university was awarded this center, but you may be wondering what this is and how can it help your research, but also how can you help the center. And I gave a general overview about activities and services of the center and its structure. And then we have some wine, which hopefully we'll be able to open, I think, at 5. Okay, we'll be waiting patiently. I'm going to start the most important thing, and that is by acknowledging and thanking people who helped put this together. Dr. Strong is the co-program director, and the different core leaders that I'm going to mention shortly. Also, several co-investigators that participated and are part of the grant. Many people that are not part of the grant but help during its preparation. Dr. Ahuja, through the Grant Seekers Program, helped significantly. Many other faculty helped to review the application and provide insight and critiques. The staff at the Barshop, Gina Peace, Denise Mitchell, Chris Trevino, and Vanessa, and the other staff, and Renee Hill, who joined more recently, and she's current program manager and coordinator. And other people that were very important are entities that and people that provided co-funding, matching funding. Bob Clark through the CTRC IIMS, Dr. Shireman and the Dean from the School of Medicine, Dr. Jufrida from VPR office, Dr. Thompson from CTRC. I hope I'm not missing anyone else. And then I'm going to get started. So the official name of these centers is Claude Pepper OAIC, Older American Independent Centers, and the goal of these programs are to enhance research and education in research to promote the physical, mental, and social independence of older Americans. And this really, our Claude Pepper Center is, I think, the extreme of our outcome in our overall program in aging at the university that has been long-standing and very robust help to people such as Ed Massaro, who's present here, and many others, including Arlen, and a number of people. And I think there has been a culmination of many years of work in aging research, going from the very basic through the Nathan Schock Center. Randy and Peter are the leaders. The intervention testing program that moves findings in basic research into the applied science in the rodent. And here we're able to apply this knowledge and move it into the clinical arena through the Pepper Center. So a little bit of background: who was Claude Pepper Center? He was a senator from Florida, and he was very instrumental. Has been really a champion of issues related to aging and older people. He was essential for the legislation that established the National Cancer Institute, but and then he also focused significantly on aging and was key for the legislation that funded a National Institute on Aging. So these centers are named in his honor. So where are the Pepper Centers? And they are listed here. Arkansas, Boston University, which is merged with Brigham and Women's, and then a number of them that are listed here. So really top places in geriatrics and aging research. And we are excited that we're able to join them. Our colleagues from in Galveston have had one, and I'm looking forward to working closer with them. We already have discussions ongoing on how to collaborate and leverage our resources. So all Pepper Centers have a specific theme or a focus, which can be narrow or very broad, and some of them have very broad focus areas. You read their focus areas, and it's essentially anything that has to do with aging and geriatrics will do. Now, ours has a bit of a more narrow focus, which we thought that to really have an impact in this competitive environment, we had to be bold and very clear. However, I think now that we're funded, particularly through a number of collaborative programs that are done with other centers, and as we collaborate with them, we can also support a more broad research. So our mission is to accelerate research and discoveries in translational research, advancing the knowledge from the basic arena generated through Shock Center, ITP, and other programs towards clinical application. And there you have two pictures of ladies that I like to show because on the one hand you have on the left a lady who's very, she looks pretty healthy and vigorous, and on the right another lady that looks very frail and with disability. So our goal is to promote research so more people age like the lady on the left and less people like the lady on the right. So our focus is on interventions, evaluating interventions that will promote healthy aging, with particular focus on pharmacology and nutraceutical interventions, which is a natural extension of the research that is being conducted at the intervention testing program. But as I said, we will be open to other types of interventions and research that is not strictly pharmacological, particularly through collaborations with other Pepper Centers. For example, there is a very large program for fall prevention that various Pepper Centers are part of. And that's just one example that this provides numerous opportunities. So the structure of the center is shown here. There's an executive committee that oversees the activity, and Randy Strong and I are the co-leaders of the program, of the overall program, with Renee Hill working as the program coordinator. We will be supervised by two committees, a institutional advisory committee that will be essentially conformed by the leadership, local leadership for example, representatives of the School of Medicine, BPR, the VA, and major departments involved in geriatrics that can provide us insight in terms of how we're doing, but also they can also guide us and help us maintain a strong presence locally. An external advisory committee that involves 4 or 5 scientists from other institutions, many times directors of other pepper centers that would also provide guidance and direction. And then there are 5 resource or service. There are 5 other cores. 3 are service cores, meaning that these cores provide services to the scientific community locally and abroad. One of them, and I'll talk about it a little bit more detail, is a preclinical core, essentially doing preclinical studies that will help advance the testing of interventions before they go to human subjects. And this essentially, we're building on the expertise of Dr. Tardif and Randy Strong, who are the core leaders on work with a marmoset as a novel model of preclinical evaluation. There's a clinical research center core that will provide advice, support, and resources for people that want to do clinical studies. Many of you may be clinicians and say, well, I don't need help. But how about if there is someone who doesn't have the expertise, or there's a basic scientist who wants to move into the clinical arena, then we can provide guidance and help with that. And the other key core is the Biostatistics Core that is run by John Galfond and Alfredo Tirado, who help with a number of services related to biostatistics. And the other 2 key cores are a pilot studies core. So Dr. Clark and I'll jump to the next one. Dr. Clark and Al Fisher coordinate the pilot studies core that essentially provides funding for pilot studies, and they'll talk about more about how is that conducted. And lastly, a career development core managed by Michael Lichtenstein and Peter Horsby, that they provide guidance and support, including protected time to conduct research. So I will end up here, and we'll move forward with Peter, who's going to tell us about the Research Career Development Core.
Well, thank you, Nick. I'm standing in for Mike Lichtenstein today. He's otherwise engaged, otherwise he would be here. The Research Career Development Core serves to support junior faculty who want to advance their career, develop their career, and do research in the area that's supported by the OAIC. And it is a career development core for scholars, meaning junior faculty who have passed the training stage and are at the stage where they want their career to undergo a further development, which we're assisting with. We do avoid the word training. These individuals would be past the levels of being trainees, but they're at the level where they're not yet fully independent scientists, and it's that transition that we're supporting. So this is just a statement of the goals of the Research Career Development Core. I want to just emphasize a few points about the kinds of scholars that we support. First, we don't necessarily restrict the kinds of individuals who could be scholars, except that, as I said, they must be beyond the training part. They must be past their postdoctoral fellowship or postdoctoral training. They must be at the level of a junior faculty position. But they can be purely clinical with an interest in research. They could be more translational so that they can be interested in something such as drug development that would be applied to human diseases, especially diseases of aging. And they can be somewhat basic, although it's really, since the PEPA Center is not the shock center, so it doesn't support absolutely basic research. If we support somebody who is a basic scientist, then they have to be looking at the ways in which their basic research can move into the translational and clinical arena. And that's where we particularly encourage basic scientists who may be working in the marmoset, which is our main translational animal model. So this is just a statement of the goals. We support the scholars for 2 years. We call them KL2 scholars, and that's for technical reasons, and it doesn't really concern us here. The key financial element is that we support the scholar with 75% of their salary. So we give them 75% salary support for 2 years, and they need to devote 75% of their time then to their research and other career development activities for their project that's concerned with the OAIC. They have to develop a project. As I say, the project can be anything ranging from the almost basic through the translational to the purely clinical, so long as it's consistent with the goals of the OAIC. They're encouraged to use the resources of the OAIC, the other cores. They're encouraged to get that kind of support. And we have a team of people, more senior people like myself and like Michael, who will assist them with other aspects of career development. So that's the statement. These are the specific aims. I think that I've more or less stated the specific ideas that I wanted to get across. We need the help of a lot of people, and we need to make sure that we have a team in place to assist these scholars. So 75% of their time needs to be committed to the activities of the OAIC, and that includes a lot of different things for which we need a lot of different help. They will undergo some kinds of classes, especially in things like if they're involved in clinical research, they need to be involved in classes involved in clinical research. They may take the MSCI program or various aspects of the MSCI program, and we will help them with the various aspects of their actual research projects, such as the development of ideas through structured mentoring. They discuss their projects with other KL2 scholars, and that includes not only our 3 KL2 scholars we have at the moment here, but also a larger number of KL2 scholars that are supported under the CTSA grant, and they meet as a group. So we need a lot of help, and this is just a sample career plan going over 2 years for a typical KL2 OAIC scholar. And as I said, we need a lot of help from a lot of different people. So when we put the grant together, we asked a lot of relatively more senior people to assist us and to lend their name, as illustrated here, so that when called on, they would be involved in some aspect of this mentoring process to assist the scholars, either as directly mentors, as the primary mentor of the scholar. In other words, the scholar would work directly with them in the lab, or as part of the team which is advising them. So that is the overview. As I say, we want to we give them straight didactic experience, straight to kind of teaching, clinical experience when necessary. We have an individual career development activity which is individualized for each of the scholars. We provide responsible conduct of research training, And the whole aim is to get them to be an independent researcher that fulfills the aims of the OAIC. So although they are already assistant professors, so they're already at some level of independence, we want them to have a fully independent lab, and we're going to help them to develop ideas for more external funding, whether that might be some other kind of K award or R01, R21, etc. And we'll give them every assistance. So I think that's it, and I'll be happy to answer any questions about the Research Career Development Corps.
Peter, can you mention the names of the three?
Sure.
Briefly their areas.
Yeah, the three current scholars we have who were either lucky or unlucky enough to be around at the time we were putting the grant together. So we asked them to come on board and and help us by providing their projects. We have Corey Ross, who is working in a very not really basic, but a more basic area of research in the marmoset. So she's kind of like on the PhD and translational animal end. We have Sukeshi Patel, who is a oncologist. She is working on drugs that are called HDAC inhibitors, histone deacetylase inhibitors. And they're chemotherapeutic drugs, but they may have an interesting kind of somewhat anti-aging effects. So kind of as a first step, we want to see if the patients who are treated with these HDAC inhibitors actually have some kind of markers that indicate these HDAC inhibitors are actually affecting the aging process, underlying aging process, as well as having a chemotherapeutic effect. And the third scholar is Kelly Revelis. She's a pharmacist, a PharmD, a qualified pharmacist from the UT School of Pharmacy. And she is going to do a study involved on the microbiome, which is a very popular topic right now in terms of aging. But specifically because of her interests and combining it with the interests of the OAIC, she's going to look at the effects of proton pump inhibitors on the microbiome in older patients because of it being such a widely available class of drugs and the potential that there could be kind of a public health issue with the microbiome changes that are occurring. And this will probably have implications for the basic underlying aging process. Yeah, yes. So since the three scholars just started, I guess officially started in May, then approximately a year from now, there will be a call for new scholar applications to be appointed in 2017. And we were discussing that this morning with Dr. Cavazos and the people who look at the scholars involved in the CTSA funding, and we're probably going to do it as a joint call for application. So there'll be an expanded pool of scholars. Some of them will be the KL2 scholars for the CTSA, and some of them, or three of them, will be OAIC scholars. And they will have to obviously specify how their particular area of research would benefit the OAIC.
Thank you, Peter.
Thank you.
Law or Al?
Oh, okay. Next, Al Fisher is going to tell us about the pilot study score. Thanks, Al.
Okay. Great. So I'm Al Fisher, and I'm going to talk about the Pilot and Exploratory Studies Core that Bob Clark and I are the leaders of. And kind of this is drawn from the grant, and the goal of the Pilot and Exploratory Studies Core is to really help spur new research here on campus, particularly in areas that are directly relevant for the OAIC. And I kind of view this as being one of the most exciting parts of this grant, is that now we can actually we have all kinds of great ideas about, okay, where would things that come out of the intervention testing program or out of the shock center, how would that make its way to the clinic? And this is really a way for us to try to start making the first steps of that. And so the the goals of the pilots that we're going to support is we really want to have kind of a focus on interventions. We will consider things that are not directly like something like you want to do chart review to see if you can acquire data for the rationale for a particular intervention, but really the goal is going to be trying to get it to being some sort of intervention that could eventually make its way to a patient, though it may make its way through a marmoset first. And then our second point is we want them to have a goal of promoting either healthy aging or slowing or preventing some adverse aspects of aging. So, and this is very, very broad. So, I mean, this could be really things like related to cancer, neurologic disease, other things that are really strongly associated with aging. Additionally, with the focus of the OAIC is really kind of the focus on trying to bring these studies to marmosets or humans as really being the target population that's going to be used in our studies. And then finally, it doesn't necessarily have to be a clinical trial. This is really the goal is to getting your initial preliminary data. And so we have some of our pilots that are really focused on tolerability, dosing, those types of things that you really want to get out of the way first and know about so that as you start to design a bigger study that you're going to try to get funded, that you already have that information in hand at that point. And then finally, the general project is going to tend to last about a year or less, which kind of makes it a little challenging for really once you get the go-ahead to really get everything organized and going as quickly as possible. So the aims of our core are really first is just to promote innovative, collaborative, multidisciplinary clinical and preclinical research that's relevant to the themes of the OAIC. We're going to provide financial and infrastructure support. So part of it is going to be the funding, but additionally, it's also going to be we're going to work with you to try to make sure you don't hit a lot of snags while you're getting your project up and running. So that whether that could be things like recruitment, writing, or coming up with ideas for the downstream publications or grant applications. We want to encourage pilot studies to develop and apply innovative methods and technologies. And then finally, we want to be as efficient as possible about soliciting and then reviewing and funding the pilots as we can be. The two core leaders, there's Dr. Clark, and he really focuses on the post-award side of things. So he's kind of like your, we kind of share the role of the program officer, and so he's kind of more tracking productivity. Is this leading to publications? Is it leading to grant applications? Are you enrolling the patients? Are the marmoset studies ongoing? What kind of data are you getting? I'm on more of the pre-award side of things. So if you're in the process of coming up with an idea, trying to see, okay, how can I make this more relevant for the themes of the OAIC? I'm the person to be in touch with. And so we have 5 pilots that we've been able to fund in this first go-round. So there are a couple of these are marmoset focused. So PES1 is one that Elizabeth is working on, where they're trying to test out the tolerability and the dosing of both metformin and acarbose in marmosets. Pilot 2 is human focused, and this is going to be looking at how does methylene blue, which is enhances mitochondrial activity, and what does that do in people with mild cognitive impairment. Pilot 3 is from Sarah and Chenpin Wang, and they're actually going to do a clinical trial of seeing what happens with metformin in people that have early diabetes, and can that prevent the development of frailty in this population that Sarah and Chenpin have identified as being at very high risk for the development of frailty. Pilot 4 is from Dr. Lee, and he's going to look at can he make a transgenic marmoset that expresses GDF11. I know it's become a very controversial area, but at least with this, he'll develop the technologies that even if GDF11 isn't the magic molecule it was made out to be, that whatever the next magic molecule is, he could be able to get into the marmoset. And then pilot number 5 is one from Ellen Craig, Dean Kellogg, and Tyler, and they're going to be looking at TOR inhibition and also perhaps acarbose as well to see what the effects are in older people. And so probably the one question people have is, how am I going to get a 2016 pilot? So this is going to have some of the information. So we're going to have a call for proposal coming out in early November. And then with that, we're going to just solicit and kind of say, these are the types of things we're looking for, give you some time to get in contact with core directors, think about your project, do the actual writing part of it, and then with the goal to have the proposals due in the early January. And the proposal will be fairly straightforward, very much based on the CTSA pilot program, with having biosketches, budget, and then a 4-page research plan that will describe what you're looking to do. And then all of our proposals, we expect to use one or more of the pepper cores, and that could really be as simple as using the biostatistics core, which is obviously a very vital aspect of just about any modern research that people do. But we definitely encourage you to use more than that in terms of core resources. And I think really an important thing, especially since this is these are areas of research that are new to many of us, I think getting in touch with core directors and really getting guidance for how to set up your study in an appropriate way, how can the core best help you, is going to really help you come up with the best proposal possible. And additionally, if you do get funded, you really don't want to be back at the step of trying to scramble around to figure out how to get your pilot going when the clock is ticking at that point. And so then the factors we're going to look for when we're doing the review of these, so these are all going to be peer reviewed with a combination of internal and external reviewers. And really the things we're going to be looking for is, are you responsive to the objectives of the PESC, meaning that is this kind of a marmoset or human-focused type of project? Are you using the pepper cores? What's the scientific merit of the underlying project? And then also starting to think about, is this going to be something we can see during the timing of this entire grant, being able to lead to future funding? Because really that's going to be an important goal for us, is how many R01s and other grants is the Pepper Center able to generate during this first 5-year period. And then finally, there's kind of a balance aspect where we don't want to fund entirely marmoset studies or entirely human studies, and we want to kind of balance off the model used, and then additionally the types of research in the scientific areas. And so at this point, thank you so much for coming today and listening to my presentation. And please, start thinking of pilot proposals. So at this point, I'll stop, take any questions people have. Okay, yes.
I wonder if you could comment on the size of the pilot grants.
Very good point. So these are $50,000, or budgets up to $50,000.
I know their answer, but can you just provide a rationale why we're not funding animal studies, like rodents and stuff?
Right, and I think a lot of it is just trying to draw the distinction between the shock, as Peter said, the shock center and the pepper center, with the thought being is that the shock center really has the focus on rodent and lower animals, and the pepper center really being a focus on kind of translating those things into marmosets and into people, that being the objective of it. And I think it's one where we're going to have the challenge when we go for renewal, is that if we went in with a lot of mouse results and studies that we supported, that it might kind of count against us at that point. Yes?
So Nick may be planning to talk about this later, but part of this, I think, now is for human aspects. There's going to be a repository, so other people may have access to the materials. And hopefully that's true on the marmoset side too. Did you want to talk about it?
Right. So it's something that I know some of our pilots initially are looking to develop repositories of samples from their trials, and it's something that I would definitely encourage people to do, because I think it makes life a lot easier especially for generating new pilot data, if you can have a sample from a marmoset treated with something or a person treated with something and be able to get access to that. So it's something so thank you for bringing that up. It does, I know, bring up concerns with how do you do your IRB, and I thank you for kind of going through inventing the wheel for us this time.
And I'll talk about the repository.
Okay. Cool.
Thank you, Al. And so next we're going to talk about the three service cores. But before we do that, just something I should have mentioned in the leadership core is that we also will sponsor a number of activities. For example, just like the Shock Center, Pepper Centers have an annual symposium and a regular standing seminar series. We thought that in order to avoid having two parallel programs, but also to promote the synergy and the interaction of the more basic and the translational program, that we would have them would jointly sponsor the seminar series. So we'll have a mix of more basic and more translational talks, and also the annual Bandera meeting will be combined starting this year. So this year the focus is on metabolism and aging, and a number of the speakers will all focus on more translational approaches. So I think the deadline already passed, but if you want to try to register, please go ahead on the Barshop website. You'll see the registration. The other thing I want to mention before we go into the service course is that we not only will support the pilot studies and the studies from the scholars, but which typically those projects are called internal projects because are sponsored or supported with funds from the Pepper Center and co-sponsoring entities, but they're also will and supposed to support what is called external projects. So let's say you want to seek or have funding from other agency to do a study, and you want to benefit from some of the resources we have, we will also do that, and then we encourage that. So let's say you want to either because of your area of your expertise, it's too basic, or perhaps you're a cardiologist and you want to do a study that relates more to geriatrics. You can approach us and say, we want to get support from the Pepper Center for our study that is more geared towards geriatrics. So just any type of support we can provide, we'll be glad to evaluate it. And it's not necessary to be one of the awardees. So the next topic will be talk about the preclinical core, and Dr. Tardif, who is our expert in the marmoset model, will tell us about that. Thank you, Suzette.
Let's see, where do I find my...
Oh, I'm sorry.
So, I don't know if this is on or not, but I just don't know if it's working. Can I just talk real loud? Is this working? Okay. So, I am the leader, along with Randy Strong and Marty Javers, of the Preclinical Research and Analytical Pharmacology Core. These are the goals as stated in the application for this core. As Al has mentioned, there's a strong emphasis on the use of marmosets as a preclinical model. So we are, part of the core's function is to develop and manage the resources that relate to the use of marmosets. That includes both managing the resource but also assisting investigators in study design and interpretation. We expect to be working with a fair number of people who aren't even sure what a marmoset is. And so there will be a need for probably a lot of collaborative work with different kinds of investigators. Marty will, of course, be providing the analytical pharmacology services, and you'll see the evidence of that and have already seen in Al's description of the pilot studies. We also hope to be developing or adapting technologies to, particularly for phenotyping of the marmosets as an aging model. And as Ellen mentioned, we will be developing banks of blood and tissue from young and aged animals as part of this core. So some of the resources that we presently have are a variety of measurements or assays that relate to mobility in the animals, a few assays that relate to cognition and memory, though we need a more extensive portfolio, and that will certainly be something we're working on. A variety of basic measures of metabolism, including basic measures of glucose fasting insulin, oral glucose tolerance test, IV glucose tolerance test. We have limited measures of cardiovascular function at the moment. We can readily measure blood pressure in the animals. We do have the potential to do echocardiograms on them, but we really need, that's an area where we need more development, I think, for the assays to be appropriately offered to investigators. We can look at some aspects of inflammation through Luis Giovadoni's immunology core at the Primate Center, and then a variety of histopathological assessments can be available. The projects that are in the that are already funded, the developmental projects and pilot projects that relate to marmosets, are these four. The two pilot projects have been mentioned. The one that has a focus on PK and tolerability for metformin and acarbose, and then the other looking at GDF11. But there's also two developmental projects in the application that were funded. One is the effect of rapamycin on lifespan and healthspan, and that's a study that involved Corey Ross as a scholar, but also involved Adam Salmon. And then a second project, which actually involves both humans and marmosets, which is a comparative methylome analysis in response to mTOR inhibition, and Tony Camuzzi is the investigator on that project. We already have a success, something that can be reported in the progress report. Adam Salmon has, who is on the screen up there, say yay, Adam. He has successfully competed for an R01 grant on the role of mTOR inhibition on longevity and healthy aging in marmosets. So we'll be starting that project here in the next month. And Corey Ross is also a co-investigator involved in that project as well. So there'll be close ties between both the phenotyping and a variety of the other aspects that Adam is particularly interested in relation to healthspan. And we did use the statistics core to help prepare that application. So Adam worked with Jonathan to make sure that we were sufficiently powered to be able to do this lifespan study, and now I just have to find all those animals. I did want to mention one thing that I would like investigators to keep in mind and let other investigators to keep in mind. You've already heard about the pilot program that's part of the Pepper Center, which is a really exciting opportunity for investigators. But I wanted to mention that there's also a pilot program at the Primate Center, which funds up to $100,000 over a 2-year period for use of primate resources that are at the Primate Center. One of the resources that's at the Primate Center is a population of geriatric marmosets. So while for the Pepper Center we have access to the barrier facility and a very strong emphasis on projects that have a lifespan component and would use the barrier facility, we also have opportunities using resources at the Primate Center. And because I, in my other hat, as the Associate Director for Research at the Primate Center, run the pilot program there, it is my intention to try to pair up specifically a targeted application for if not this year, next year, for aging and using the marmoset model, where someone could potentially pull together resources from both of these programs and put together something that I think could produce meaningful results.
There's an aged baboons for, what was it, osteoporosis or cardiovascular?
Well,
do you have other samples that are aged as
there
well?
are, there's ongoing research and, of course, a long history of research with the baboons in chronic disease of various kinds. There was a very strong emphasis for many decades on cardiovascular disease, and particularly on diet and genotype interactions in atherosclerosis. But there's also, there was, it's not active now because the investigator who primarily drove that work has left to go to Eli Lilly, but she that worked on osteoarthritis. But there's certainly still a bank of information there and some samples. There are old baboons, and I would love it if anybody had something to do with old baboons. It is extremely difficult to continue to support the old baboon population because they're expensive to keep, and if someone's not using them, it's hard to justify the maintenance of that resource. Well, some of them are, and the genomics core for the Primate Center, and that's something I should mention in relation to the marmosets as well. The genomics core will be sequencing about 700 to 800 baboons, and they will be sequencing eventually all of the marmosets over the next 3 to 4 years. So there will be genome sequence for the animals that are there, and the animals that come to the Pepper Center that made up the barrier colony that will be the animals in the RAPA project all came from the Primate Center. So that genomic information is relevant. Yeah?
How many marmosets do you currently have, and kind of give us an idea of the age?
Right. So there's about 310 marmosets at the Primate Center, and we have about 40 animals that are between 11 and 17 years old. We have an additional 8 or 10 that are in that age range at the Barshop Institute. The rest of the population has the demographics you would expect. We've got a lot of young animals. We will probably continue to develop an aging cohort by retiring breeders. That's going to be probably the most likely way that we can continue to support that cohort. We presently have around 70 marmosets at the Barshop. They are in 2 different sets of projects, and there will be at some point in the next 6 months or so a conversation between Nick and I about continuing to breed marmosets at the Barshop. Is that something we want to continue to do or not? Yeah.
Regarding your potential for some kind of a shared pilot project program, I might mention that for the first time this past year, CTSA teamed up with TBRI
Right.
in a joint pilot program, and we were anticipating funding 2 projects. The rules were that it had to be co-PIs from TBRI and outside. We were anticipating funding 2, but we had 3 really high scoring ones, so we're funding 3.
Great. That's terrific.
And I think the topics, at least some of those, would mesh nicely with
Yeah, I would assume that, I think one of them probably has to do with Parkinson's disease. I know that there was discussion of Jeff.
Marcel Davey has a
Yeah,
stem cell project.
right. So,
Tony Capozzi has a human genetics study.
So, any other questions? Okay, well, here is my phone number and my email address, so if you have any questions or ideas, just feel free to get in touch with me.
Thank you, Suzette. It's very exciting, the opportunities for collaboration with the PRIMATE Center and TBRI and as well as CTSA for leveraging resources. So that's very exciting. John, do you want to tell us about the Biostatistics Core, please?
Hi, I'm John Gelfond. I'm in the Epidemiology and Biostatistics department here, and I'm the leader of the Biostatistics and Data Management Core. We thought about changing it to Biostatistics and Clinical Informatics, but it's the concept is the same. My co-leader is Alfredo Tirado Ramos. He was traveling today, couldn't be here, but he's the clinical informaticist. And so our basic aims for supporting the Pepper Center research are providing biostatistical expertise for projects, including study design, data analysis, and for the internal projects, we're providing a service of creating study databases so we can efficiently capture the data from the clinical trials or the basic research that's going on within the Pepper Center currently, and the clinical informatics support. This was a developmental project, actually, that Alfredo was heading up, and I'll talk more about those ideas, and the repository for clinical aging data. And that's something that was introduced a little bit earlier, that if we have collected data as part of the Pepper Center or from an external source that we want to make available to people who are doing clinical research, we want them to be able to access that data as efficiently as possible and get it to them in a manner that they could be understood and used for future research purposes. So as far as the biostatistics support, we provide study design not just for the internal projects that we've already helped with, the pilot projects and developmental projects as well, but we also want to encourage people who are thinking about doing translational aging research to contact us, whether it's for Pepper Center funding as a pilot project or for something else like Dr. Salmon's research. Thank you, Suzette, for the plug there. If you're thinking about getting into translational research and you're submitting an R01, for example, we would be glad to help with the design for that too. And as far as data, yes. Oh yeah, go ahead.
Is that restricted to projects with marmosets, or?
Oh, all translational aging projects.
Okay.
We can help with proposal development. Some of the things about aging that are kind of unique, in my perspective, as a statistician, are that the clinical and the translational and aging research are very interconnected, because aging research tends to look at the animal holistically, not just how long did they live, did this enzyme go up or down, but you're looking at health span, you're looking at complicated phenotypes, you're looking at immunology simultaneous with decline in mental functioning and stuff like that. So there are some complex issues that you get with the statistics that we can help with, whether you're talking about marmoset studies or you're clinical, or you're a basic scientist who has an idea that they want to translate into the clinical setting. We can help you design a clinical trial, define meaningful clinical endpoints that are well powered to test the hypothesis. So we're really trying to fulfill the whole range from early translational to clinical trial. And right, even so, that's at the design phase. But if you have a secondary analysis that's related to aging research, that you're trying to get that last bit of data analysis done for a publication, we can assist with that also. But after your study's begun, including the internal projects, we can assist with accrual monitoring to make sure that you're getting your patients enrolled in a timely manner. And so some of the things that we're doing on the clinical informatics side, that is Alfredo's sort of domain, but is cohort identification. Let's say you're conducting a study on people who are very frail. Then those people need to be identified. Those potential research participants need to be identified, and now we have available through Alfredo's group access to millions of medical records, so we can select people with those criterion that meet your inclusion-exclusion criterion, and even with IRB approval, we can even contact those people directly to ask them if they want to be included in the study. So that, we're accelerating the pace of enrollment so that we can get the full sample size and have your power that you need to test your hypotheses. And another potential goal that Alfredo's group is working on, actually, they've come a long way, is using this I2B2 database, which is that set of medical records that we have from UT Medicine. If you have a hypothesis related to aging epidemiology that you could test using clinical data, they can go into the medical record and extract the relevant variables for you so that you can construct a model or test a hypothesis. And that's sort of a new thing that they've got going already. And something that's still in the developmental stage is the data repository for these clinical samples that might be utilized by internal or external studies. We want to make that data available. And I guess that's it. If you have a request, you can go to the Department of Biostatistics website and click on Biostatistical Services, and we have a request form there. And if you want to select Pepper Center, we will. It will speed up your request. Us getting to you. We'll be prioritized. Are there any questions? Alrighty.
Thank you, John.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.
No problem.
So I'll talk about the third clinical core, which is the third resource service core, which is a clinical research core. Dr. Curiel and Kellogg are the leaders. Dr. Kellogg is on medical leave, and Dr. Curiel is out of town. So I'll talk about it. Other important members of this core is Dr. Espinosa with her expertise in geriatric assessment, Dr. Roach, who provides expertise on clinical pharmacology, as well as Dr. Javers and pharmacy and clinical pharmacology. Don Royal, who will be supporting cognitive assessments, and I will be helping with metabolic and muscle function assessments. This is just broadly to provide support from intellectual to actual practical support and clinical research studies. The focus in the application was pharmacology interventions and nutraceutical interventions. Nevertheless, we recognize the importance of other interventions such as lifestyle interventions, exercise, dietary interventions. So we will be open to that, and particularly through multi-center trials that are very important for the older people. So, or practically, how can we help? So we can start from the very beginning from trial planning and conduction. So as I said, you may have no experience at all with human studies, or you may have experience but not in the geriatric arena. So we can start from the very early process through consultation, through study design, writing the protocol, helping with grant applications, and then when it comes to subject recruitment and retention. So we have some staff that are there to help. Also, including regulatory compliance and coordination. So we do have some staff that are savvy on these processes and are willing to help. Depending on the workload, we might actually be very hands-on on the actual process of IRB approvals, et cetera. But certainly we'll be there to guide, which is obviously very important because we want to attract and we want to enhance activities in geriatrics research. So in terms of recruitment and retention, as Dr. Galfon mentioned, we are also helping with that, and we have already set up a registry and a repository. We have the IRB approval recently, so if you want to, we're planning to have your own registry and repository, you might want to consider and piggyback to ours, and that way we'll facilitate things. But the idea is that to have a database of people that already have agreed to participate in research studies from from essentially all age groups, adults from 18 to, there's no limit, so we'll be enrolling into the registry from both genders and from spectrum to very healthy to more frail. So we can also not only study healthy aging, but also certain age-related diseases. And this will certainly help when you want to do your study. We already have a registry of people that are interested in participating. When it comes to actually do the assessments, I'm calling deep phenotyping and geriatrics and aging, all the way from geriatrics assessment, physical function assessment that typically geriatricians know better how to do. So we have people that are experienced in that. As I mentioned, cognitive assessment and brain function through Dr. Royal and Dr. Fox also will be supporting this core. Metabolism and bioenergetics, it's a very interesting, well, to me, but it's a very important area that it's, I think there's newer technologies in the horizon, and studying metabolism, bioenergetics in people and different aspects of organ system physiology. Clinical pharmacology, as I mentioned, Dr. Roach and Dr. Javers are part of the core and will be helping. So if you want to know, want to test a specific drug or a compound, what is pharmacokinetics, what is the best way to dose it, we can help with that. Studies that the internal studies we're supporting that have been mentioned before, I think all of them, the methylene blue study on brain function from the Dr. Rodriguez, Fox, and Royal, the metformin trial from Chen-Ping Wang and Dr. Espinosa, and mTOR inhibition study from Dr. Scalog and Craig. But as I said, we're also want to support external studies, and I think that's where another important value for the core will be. So I think that's all we have for you. I hope it was that you found it helpful. We're very excited about this opportunity. You can also help us. How to contact us? The website will be ready very soon. So we'll have a website, and there will be contact information and service request forms. In the meantime, you can email me directly for any question or service requests, and then I will channel it. Another, I think, a key issue for the maintenance and enhancement of the program is developing the future scientists. So I encourage you to get involved in our Pepper Center. You don't have to be a clinician. You can be a basic scientist, but you want to be trained in clinical research. We are here to help in that. Also, if you can help us identify people that would benefit from our career development program, please let me know, or Dr. Hornsby, because we're always on the lookout for people that we trying to identify people who be interested in developing a career in this area. This is, I think, it's an area of this of the area of interventions in aging is getting stronger. There's a group that is already had conversations with the FDA regarding identifying or labeling aging or conditions of aging as an indication for the development of therapies. And some progress has been made. The Pepper Center group is forming a small subcommittee, and so more research, collaborative research is done in this area. And so there are a number of efforts, not only locally but elsewhere, about trying to strengthen this area of research. So I'm going to stop there. I'm here to answer questions. All the other core leaders that are here will gladly answer any questions you may have, and hopefully, I guess we need to wait before we can open the wine. I don't know what the rules are, but I think we're almost there.
20 more minutes of questions.